Arizona has 10 dams that engineers have already modeled failure scenarios for. Some protect farmland, some protect cities, and one of them, if it ever went, could affect more than 40 million people across 7 states. We are counting all 10 down right now. At number 10, we have Painted Rock Dam on the Gila River in Maricopa County. Most Arizonans have never heard of it. And here is the thing that makes it unusual. This dam is almost always completely empty. It was finished in 1960 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and was never designed to hold water year-round. It is a flood control structure only. It fills fast during major storms and drains back out once the event passes. Because it sits dry most of the time, it does not get the same level of regular monitoring that a full reservoir dam receives. A structure that only gets tested during the worst possible conditions needs to be ready exactly when the pressure is highest. When a heavy monsoon system unloads across the region, Painted Rock can go from empty to critically stressed in a matter of hours. There is very little runway between normal conditions and a scenario where the dam is being pushed near its limits. The land immediately around the dam is sparsely populated, which limits the immediate human exposure. But the downstream path does not stay empty for long. The Gila River corridor runs directly toward the greater Phoenix metropolitan area. A failure during a major flood event would push a surge of water down that corridor toward one of the most densely populated regions in the Southwest. The distance buys some warning time, but there is no stopping a Gila River running at full capacity. Painted Rock is not the most well-known structure on this list, but a dam that sits empty only activates during catastrophic conditions and drains toward millions of people downstream earns its place at number 10 without any argument. At number 9, we have Horseshoe Dam, located on the Verde River, about 65 miles northeast of Phoenix. Completed in 1945, it is an earthfill dam. That one construction detail completely changes its risk profile compared to a concrete structure. Earthfill dams are built from compacted soil and rock, rather than poured concrete. They perform well under normal conditions, but they carry one specific weakness that concrete dams do not share. If water ever spills over the top, erosion starts almost immediately. That process is called overtopping, and it can destroy an earthfill dam faster than most people expect. Once the water finds a path over the crest and begins cutting into the embankment, the timeline to full breach can be measured in hours, not days. The Verde River watershed is not a gentle system. Monsoon events hitting the high country to the north can send fast-moving flood surges down the Verde with very little warning. The river can shift from calm to dangerous in a matter of hours. Horseshoe Dam was built for water storage and flood control, and it still feeds into the Phoenix area water supply today. But its age combined with earthfill construction means that an extreme event pushing water over its crest is a scenario engineers take seriously. What makes this worse is what sits directly downstream. Bartlett Dam is positioned just below Horseshoe on the same river. If Horseshoe were to fail, the surge would hit Bartlett almost immediately, turning one failure into a potential 2-dam event in rapid succession. That cascade risk is what pushes Horseshoe to number 9 on this list. A single earth-filled dam failing during a monsoon flood is bad. A wall of water from that failure immediately pressuring the next dam downstream is a different level of problem entirely. At number 8, we have Bartlett Dam, sitting just downstream from Horseshoe on the Verde River. Completed in 1939, it is one of the older major dams still in active operation in Arizona, and its design is genuinely unusual for a structure of its size. Bartlett is a multiple arch concrete structure. That design is not commonly used in modern dam construction, which means there are very few recent engineering benchmarks to compare it against. It stores water in Bartlett Reservoir and serves the Salt River Project water delivery system for Phoenix. Its age alone puts it in a different category from newer dams. Structures built in the late 1930s were designed under engineering standards that predate modern seismic calculations and updated safety requirements. Decades of temperature cycling and variable water levels take a measurable toll on concrete. The Salt River Project has conducted safety upgrades and inspections over the years, and those efforts matter. But an older multiple arch design requires a level of ongoing maintenance that a more conventional structure does not. The architecture itself creates complexity in the monitoring process. Its position directly downstream of Horseshoe Dam is what compounds the risk significantly. Under normal conditions, Bartlett functions as intended. But in a scenario where Horseshoe fails first, Bartlett would receive a surge it was never designed to absorb on top of its existing storage. That combination of age, unusual design, and downstream exposure to a potential surge from Horseshoe creates a risk profile that goes beyond what either dam would represent on its own. The two dams together form a linked vulnerability on the Verde River. If both Horseshoe and Bartlett failed in a cascading event, the flood wave would travel toward the Salt River system, and then into the Phoenix metro. Hundreds of thousands of residents live along that downstream path. That is what places Bartlett Dam firmly at number 8. At number 7, we have Coolidge Dam on the Gila River in Graham County. Completed in 1928, it is a multiple-dome concrete dam and was one of the largest structures of its type anywhere in the world when it was first built. The reservoir it creates is San Carlos Lake, and it behaves differently from most Arizona reservoirs. Depending on rainfall and upstream water use, San Carlos Lake can shrink dramatically. There have been periods where the reservoir was almost completely dry for extended stretches of time. That variability in water levels puts unusual stress on the dam structure over time. Concrete that repeatedly cycles between holding back a full reservoir and sitting exposed to heat and dry air ages differently than a dam that maintains consistent water contact on both faces. The dam was built primarily to supply irrigation water to the San Carlos Irrigation Project. It has been in service for nearly a century, under engineering standards that predate modern seismic analysis and updated structural safety codes. That age gap is a real factor in how engineers assess it. The Gila River Valley below the dam holds agricultural land and communities in Graham and Pinal counties. A failure would push floodwaters westward through the Gila River corridor, a path that eventually connects to the broader Phoenix Basin far downstream. The distance between Coolidge Dam and the Phoenix metro area provides a longer warning window than most other dams on this list. Emergency managers would have more time to respond, but the volume of water involved at full reservoir capacity is not something distance alone solves. A nearly 100-year-old multiple-dome dam sitting on a river that feeds directly toward one of the largest cities in the Southwest, with age-related engineering concerns baked in from the start, is why Coolidge Dam lands at number 7 on this list. At number 6, we have Stewart Mountain Dam, a concrete arch dam on the Salt River in Maricopa County, completed in 1930. It sits at the lowest point in the chain of Salt River dams, and it impounds Sawaro Lake, one of the most visited reservoirs near Phoenix. Its location close to the metro area is precisely what makes it dangerous. Most of the other dams on this list have geography working in their favor, providing distance and warning time between a failure and populated areas. Stewart Mountain Dam does not have that buffer. A breach at Stewart Mountain would send floodwaters moving quickly through the lower Salt River channel. Mesa, Tempe, and the broader urban core of the Phoenix metro sit directly in that downstream path. The time between failure and impact would be short, but the location risk is only part of the story. Stewart Mountain Dam also sits at the bottom of a chain of 4 interconnected dams managed by the Salt River Project. Anything that fails above it sends water directly toward it in sequence. If a failure event originated further upstream at Roosevelt, Mormon Flat, or Horse Mesa Dam, the resulting surge would travel downstream through each reservoir in turn. By the time that volume of water reached Stewart Mountain, it could far exceed what the structure was designed to handle. That upstream exposure to cascading failure is what elevates Stewart Mountain beyond a simple single-dam risk assessment. It carries the consequences of everything that sits above it on the Salt River chain, plus its own structural age concerns from nearly a century of operation. Proximity to millions of people, a direct downstream path through the Phoenix urban core, and exposure to surge volumes from upstream failures all combine to place Stewart Mountain Dam at number 6. The closer to the city, the less room there is for error. At number 5, we have Horse Mesa Dam, a concrete arch dam on the Salt River completed in 1927, impounding Canyon Lake. It sits between Mormon Flat Dam upstream and Stewart Mountain Dam downstream in the Salt River Project, chain managed across Maricopa County. Canyon Lake and the surrounding area inside the Tonto National Forest are heavily used for recreation. On any given weekend, thousands of people are on or near the water. That human activity in close proximity to the dam adds a layer to the consequence picture. The chain structure of the Salt River dams is both a strength and a risk multiplier at the same time. Water managed across multiple reservoirs provides flexibility in normal operations. But in a failure scenario, each dam in the chain becomes a potential trigger for the next one. If Horse Mesa Dam were breached, water from Canyon Lake would flow directly towards Stewart Mountain Dam downstream. The volume of that surge, added to whatever Stewart Mountain was already holding, could push the lower dam past its design capacity in a compressed time frame. A domino failure along the Salt River chain is considered a low-probability event. Engineers and emergency managers say that clearly. But it is also one of the most extensively studied catastrophic flood scenarios for the Phoenix metro area, which tells you how seriously it is taken. Maricopa County emergency managers have developed detailed flood inundation maps specifically around the cascade failure scenario on the Salt River. The modeling exists because the downstream consequences are large enough that planning for the unlikely is considered a basic responsibility of regional emergency management. Horse Mesa Dam, at nearly 100 years old, Positioned as a critical link in a chain where a failure travels downhill toward a major city, and surrounded by recreational users who assume the structure above them is reliable, earns its place at number 5. At number 4 we have Mormon Flat Dam, another concrete arch dam on the Salt River, completed in 1925 and impounding Apache Lake. It is the second dam in the Salt River chain above Stewart Mountain, and it has now been in service for a full century. Like its neighbors in the Salt River project system, Mormon Flat serves both water storage and hydroelectric power generation. It is a working piece of infrastructure, not a dormant structure. Water moves through it regularly, and the dam operates under continuous load across its operational lifespan. At over 100 years old, Mormon Flat is among the oldest operating major dams in Arizona. Concrete structures age under the influence of variable water levels, temperature swings between seasons, and low-level seismic activity over time. A century of that exposure adds up in ways that periodic inspections try to measure. The Salt River Project has maintained and inspected Mormon Flat consistently over the decades. That ongoing attention matters, and it has kept the dam in service far longer than many comparable structures built in the same era. The maintenance record is part of why it is still operating. But age brings a form of uncertainty that maintenance cannot fully eliminate. Engineers can inspect visible surfaces and measure known stress points. What they are working against is a structural baseline that was set by 1920s engineering standards before modern seismic and load analysis existed. A failure at Mormon Flat would not stay local. The surge would travel directly into Horse Mesa Reservoir, adding that volume to the downstream chain. From there, the cascade logic plays out exactly as described at numbers 5 and 6, moving towards Stewart Mountain and then the metro area. 100 years of operation, a position near the top of a chain where failures multiply as they travel downstream, and engineering standards from an era that predate modern seismic analysis place Mormon Flat Dam at number 4. Age is not just a number on a structure like this. At number 3 we have Roosevelt Dam, the anchor of the entire Salt River project, and one of the most historically significant water structures in the American West. Completed in 1911 and substantially reconstructed in the 1990s, it is the largest masonry dam in the United States. It impounds Lake Roosevelt, the largest reservoir in Arizona by capacity, sitting at the border of Maricopa and Gila counties on the Salt River. The dam provides the water supply foundation for the entire Phoenix metropolitan area, which now holds more than 5 million residents. The major reconstruction work, completed in the 1990s, raised the dam's height and significantly increased its storage capacity. That project represented a serious investment in modernizing a structure that was already approaching 80 years old at the time. The updated dam is a different structure from what stood in 1911. But Roosevelt Dam sits at the top of the Salt River chain. If it ever failed, it would not just be a single dam breach. It would be the starting point for the most severe version of the cascade scenario that emergency managers have modeled for the Phoenix area. The flood wave generated by a Roosevelt Dam failure would travel downstream through Mormon Flat, Horse Mesa, and Stewart Mountain reservoirs in sequence. Engineers modeling this scenario project that the downstream dams would likely be overwhelmed one after another as the surge volume accumulated from each reservoir. The downstream path through the Salt River Valley would inundate large portions of Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, and other densely populated East Valley communities. These are not lightly populated areas. They represent some of the fastest-growing urban zones in the entire country sitting directly in that flood corridor. Roosevelt Dam is well maintained, reconstructed within living memory, and monitored continuously by the Salt River Project. The risk is not imminent, but a structure holding back the largest reservoir in Arizona, sitting at the top of a chain that leads directly through the Phoenix metro, belongs at number 3. At number 2 we have Hoover Dam, on the Colorado River, at the Arizona-Nevada border, straddling Mohave County, Arizona, and Clark County, Nevada. Completed in 1936, it is one of the largest concrete arch-gravity dams in the world, and it impounds Lake Mead. Lake Mead is the largest reservoir in the United States by maximum water capacity. When full, it holds approximately 36.7 trillion liters of water. The dam provides water to roughly 40 million people across Arizona, Nevada, California, and parts of Mexico, and generates hydroelectric power across the Southwest. A failure at Hoover Dam is widely considered one of the most consequential single infrastructure events that could occur in the continental United States. The scale of water behind it, combined with the number of people depending on it, places it in a category almost nothing else occupies. A catastrophic breach would send a flood surge of extraordinary scale down the Colorado River corridor. Lower Colorado River communities in western Arizona would be hit first. The flood would then move through the lower desert toward agricultural regions and eventually reach the Gulf of California. Las Vegas receives nearly 90% of its water supply from Lake Mead. A Hoover Dam failure would not just be a flood event. it would be a simultaneous water supply crisis for one of the most water-dependent cities in the country, hitting immediately and with no short-term replacement. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, which operates Hoover Dam, continuously monitors the structure and has conducted numerous safety reviews and upgrades across its nearly 90-year operational life. The dam is considered structurally sound by every current assessment. This is not a structure on the edge of failure, but its age, the sheer volume of water it holds, the number of people whose water supply runs directly through it, and its consequence classification in national infrastructure planning keep Hoover Dam at the center of dam safety discussions. That is why it sits at number 2. But number 1 is where everything changes. Glen Canyon Dam sits on the Colorado River in Coconino County, just south of the Utah border near the town of Page. Completed in 1966, it impounds Lake Powell, the second largest reservoir in the United States by maximum water capacity. The dam is operated by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and is a cornerstone of the Colorado River water management system that supplies water and power across 7 western states. What makes it number 1 is not just its size. It is a specific combination of factors that no other dam on this list shares. First, Glen Canyon Dam sits directly upstream of the Grand Canyon. A catastrophic failure would send a wall of water through one of the narrowest and deepest canyon systems on the continent. The Grand Canyon would channel and amplify that surge in ways that open river corridors simply do not. Second, a failure at Glen Canyon would place immediate and potentially catastrophic additional stress on Hoover Dam downstream. The number 2 dam on this list would go from managing normal Colorado River flow to absorbing the full output of a Lake Powell breach within a compressed time frame. Third, and this is the detail that moves Glen Canyon from theoretical risk to documented concern, the dam's spillway tunnels suffered serious cavitation damage during the extreme high water events of 1983. That event required emergency repairs and placed the structure near its operational limits in a way that was not anticipated. That 1983 event is not ancient history. It is engineering documentation, showing that under prolonged high-inflow conditions, Glen Canyon Dam can be pushed toward the edges of what it was designed to handle. The repairs were completed, but the record of what happened is permanently part of the dam's file. More than 40 million people across the American West depend on the Colorado River system that Glen Canyon anchors. Agricultural regions, major cities, hydroelectric grids, and the Grand Canyon ecosystem itself all sit downstream of that one structure. No other dam on this list carries consequences that reach that far. That is number 1.